exciting episode of Ed's Auto Garage podcast. But before we get started with the podcast, let's give a shout out to Arango Insurance Services. Arango Insurance Services is your traditional home, auto, commercial insurance brokerage that specializes in providing insurance to the automotive industry. From exotic and collector cars and private automotive collections to insuring automotive OEM repair shops, restoration shops, automotive component manufacturers, and even dealerships. We write coverages with many of the top carriers, and we can customize a policy to fit your needs. Check us out, Arango Insurance Services, at www.arangoins.com, or call us at 949-887-1274. Again, 949-887-1274. And stay tuned to this podcast. It's a good one. Thanks. Bye. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ed's Auto Garage. Again, it's Ed Arango coming to you live from within my garage here in sunny Huntington Beach, California. I'll tell you, for the last 2 weeks, it's been scorching here and very uncommon for us. I mean, we were hitting 90-degree days here for us, which is really crazy. Today, it's a little more milder. It's about 78. It's, you know, it's nice. It's doable. But again, thanks everybody for coming in. And many of you guys can kind of see that things look a little bit different in my garage. You can see the Alpha has been moved around a little bit. I have it. And not that I'm trying to show it off or anything. It's literally after I finish the podcast, I have to work on it. I got to figure out what happened with the flipping blinkers. So, but I'm glad I have John Saccameno from Sport and Specialty out in Illinois with us today. And he'll kind of guide us through this here. John, thanks so much for hopping on here with me today.
Hey Ed, thanks for having me. It's not 78 here. It's no, it's about the same degrees here. Actually, I'm kind of pacing you right now in northern Illinois. Things are getting dry, but it's nice here today.
So, I mean, you guys have had also some pretty hot weather the last couple of weeks too out there, right?
Yeah, it was good. And then this winter showed up on Sunday for a trade. You know, I went to a big British car meet on Sunday, and it turned 58 degrees and rained all day. And I went, oh, that's right. That's right. This is why I love living here. This is beautiful. This is just, so I came home and I had to turn the heat on for a few minutes because I'm like, this is crazy. But, you know, hey, it is what it is. I can always come out and visit you guys, but, you know, the business is here. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really intriguing to me about John is that John's one of these guys that's kind of, and I guess we'll hear it directly from him, but is kind of done what he's wanted to do. He's kind of, has the guts, or has had the guts to just make a career change from one industry and move into the automotive industry. But before we get talking a little bit about that, John, bring us up to speed a little bit about you and your upbringing and your family life, and were your parents involved in the autos? Did they care less? Were you the only one in your family that liked cars? How did that love for autos kind of start up in your head?
You know, Ed, you said you wouldn't talk about things that might be off limits, and, you know, I mean, family and, you know, my prison record, all that stuff is off limits. No, I'm the generational, hippie, I guess. I just like cars since I was a kid. I remember, you know, like three and a half years old, my dad borrowed an MGA from a guy in the neighborhood and took me down for a drive, Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, runs along the lake. And God, I remember just having so much fun doing that. And, you know, you could smell the leather and the top was down, and my dad was driving, and I'm looking around going, oh my God, this, you know, oh my God, you know, as a kid, you're just sitting there going, this is awesome. You know, I want to do this again. And I just became hooked on them. Every time we drove, we took a ride, you know, I'd look out and like, oh, there's another little car, and there's another little car. So I kind of became hooked on the, you know, small British cars. took me a while to fall in love with the Italian stuff, but indeed I did. My first car was a TR3. I grew up in the city, in the city of Chicago. I thought I was about 12, 13. We moved out to Park Ridge, which is a suburb of Chicago near O'Hare, and then my friends, all of a sudden you start going into high school and you find out, you tend to gravitate towards other people that like cars. And next thing it doesn't matter if they're American cars or foreign cars. Cars are cars, So I've been pretty much a car guy most of my life, I guess. We were all working on cars in high school and listening to music and getting thrown out of garages and having that kind of 70s life, if you will.
Yeah, and I'm sure you kind of grew up in that era, such as mine, where they were still offering, auto shop in high school and things like that, and at least in my high school, I mean, the car guys all went to like the shop and worked, did their oil changes and checked their brakes and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that was probably pretty similar to you over there at that during that era.
I took 2 years of auto shop.
Wow.
I was an art student and an auto shop student and an English student. But basically, I took 2 years of auto shop. I rebuilt engines. We did everything. We did everything in that shop, and that would have been your first, if you would, your first educational experience, with the automotive industry. Although we were all taking apart stuff from one stroke Briggs or 4-stroke Briggs and Stratton engines and anything else we could get our hands on beforehand. But we had a really good auto shop teacher. I still have the book from back then. I use every once in a while. I go back to some of the notes I had, and most of the cars I work on today, with a good auto shop program, you can pretty much still work on them.
So then, fast forward, life happens, you get a career going. Tell us a little bit about the career path you originally took, and what kind of car were you driving during those periods of time?
Well, at one point, I got out of high school. I worked as a Burger King manager for 4 years or so. And, then I had company cars and an MGB, it was a nice deal. And then I got involved in the computer industry within Burger King as they started going computerized back in the late 70s. And I kind of gravitated to that. And that was cool. I mean, that was something neat. It was something different. And I had an aptitude for it. So I ended up being a sales guy selling the stuff that we were buying. And it kind of led me into a sales career on the technology end of the world. I sold retail systems, if you will, everything from DOS-based stuff to Unix and Xenix-based, high-end stuff. And
point of sale stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it was fun. And during that time, I really, at some point I had an MGB and I didn't know what straight commission was. You ate what you killed. And, everybody says, hey, here's your company car, but you got to pay for it. And I'm like, oh, wow, what's that? So I ended up giving I'm like, no, you guys pay for it. No, that's not how this works. And one thing, I had an MGB and I'm showing up, and in the Midwest, it's a little humid, in the Midwest. So I'm showing up for sales calls, wearing a suit in an MGB with a top up, sweating my brains out. And I said, yeah, this isn't going to work. So I finally had to trade the MGB in for like an Impala. And it was awful. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm an Impala guy. How did that happen? But I had to make a living, and actually that was the right move, for a few years. But eventually, which when you're in your 20s, 4 years is a long time. I had that about 4 years, and I ended up buying a BMW 320, a used one, but nevertheless, something a little more my speed, if you will.
Sure.
So that kind of put me back on the path.
Gotcha. I mean, and you always had that car bug in you throughout that whole time.
Sure.
I assess, right?
Well, yeah, and then I ended up one thing leads to another. Then you go 320. Then you buy the next model, then you go, a Porsche would be nice, and so one thing, and you're starting to make a few more dollars, and you bought the house, so that's done. You've got a few other things done, and so I went from I traded in a 318 BMW, which was a terrible car, but it was my daily driver, and I bought a 944 turbo back in the late 80s. And I said, oh, this is great. And then once again, I got a job where I was working a little more locally, and 944 turbo in the wintertime is like one of the worst vehicles on the planet. It's like, oh, it's 50-50 balance. And it's like, it's a great propeller, it goes round and around, and you'd slide off the road, going in a straight line. I'm like,
oh, wow.
Well, yeah, it was. I'm like, yeah, I should. So I ended up trading that in for like another BMW. I got like a 530, I think, at the time. And, it's just, you just keep going down the path, and then you go, well, I got a sedan. Next thing I think, I'm doing okay. I moved to another company. I worked for the company that sells all those little white tags that you see on goods, so people can't steal aspirin and batteries. And so I worked for a company called Checkpoint Systems. I moved over into that side of the planet. And I was there a long time. But I was also pretty good at it. So I was making some money and decided to waste a lot of it, on cars. So once again, I went down the path and I bought a 63 Austin Healey BJ7, and I was driving that. Plus I had my, by then I had a 540i, and this is the happiest guy on the planet,
So the Austin Healey at that time, when you bought this 63, I mean, you're talking probably, are you in the late 80s, early 90s? No, that 92, had to be the 90s.
About 92. Yeah.
93. So the Healey was already a pretty old car.
Oh, sure.
Yep. And was it already kind of like restored pristine, or was it kind of like it had been restored, kind of like a driver restoration, but it was a solid car. There was it wasn't hacked together. I didn't want to buy something like that. I didn't want to put the time into it. But it was a solid car. You could drive it around pretty much anywhere. So, of course, the shop I took it to was a place called Sport and Specialty. Okay.
And the gentleman who started Sport and Specialty was a man named Mark Baker. And Mark and I became pretty fast friends. We're exactly the same age, graduated from high school the same year. If we had been in high school together, we probably would have been buddies, so we became pretty good friends. And then, one thing led to another. And of course now, I went to a show, and I went, oh, this is great. I got my Healey. And I showed up at the show at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, okay, what do you do the rest of the time? And I'm like 39, I'm looking around going, what do we do now? Like, oh, you take your chair out and you sit around and wave to people. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. This is it all day. And as it turns out, I met some guys who vintage raced. And once again, one thing led to another. And, I a month and a half later, I was down in Florida. I had a trade meeting, and I was looking through like sports car, one of the sports car magazines. It was probably Grassroots or something. And I fired off down to one of the local, to Fort Pierce, and bought a Bug-Eye Sprite race car.
Wow.
I had it delivered to the house and spent the winter putting it back together and, working on it. And then in the spring, I sent it up to Mark at Sport and Specialty, and he kind of sorted it and got a few things ready. And that was 1998. And I've been kind of vintage racing ever since. And then Mark, Mark and I still remain friends through all that.
So you do you'll do historic racing like do they do that down in Sebring where are some of the tracks that they're doing the majority? Lime Rock?
Pretty much all the big tracks. Like in the Midwest here around Chicago, we're really blessed. I mean, we have Road America. There's a big event.
Road America, sure, yeah.
Big event coming at Road America. 6 miles from my shop is a track called Blackhawk Farms, which is, a very traditional, small, 1.9 mile road road race sports car track, and it's terrific. I probably have about 2,000, 3,000 laps or something on it because it's the local, it's our local one.
So would that be comparable to, like, for us, like Willow Springs or something like that?
Yeah, maybe Willow Springs is kind of bigger, but yeah,
Okay.
it's about that size.
Okay.
And it's and it's classic. It's a classic sports car track. But there's also Audubon Country Club, which has two courses or one big course, is a local track. Gingerman Speedway, or Gingerman International Raceway, as they like to call it, which is a wonderful track. I love that track. They have a race a week from this weekend, and then there's Groton, which is one of the craziest tracks on the planet. It's a ton of fun, and so we within 3 hours of Chicago, we probably have 5 or 6 really good tracks. We're fortunate.
Wow, that is really lucky, because I mean, even here in Southern California, you have to go to Fontana to the Speedway, or we've got Willow Springs, Button Willow, and then
Sure.
and then you got to drive from here. It's like a 5-hour drive. I think 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours, depending on how you go, to Monterey, to Laguna Seca.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty fortunate that you have something within that close proximity.
We've got good groups. Midwestern Council of Sports Car Clubs has a good vintage event. I'm the chair there, so I don't mind supporting it. But I race with VSCDA too, which is another club. It's a club-based group, and great people, lots of fun. So I've been doing that. I recently sold my Bug Eye, which I ran for a long time and kept it, even after I had moved to an Alpha GTV. I was racing GTV for a long time. I still have the car. I'm still racing it. And then I also last year I added a BMW 72 BMW 2002 to the mix, because I just can't help myself. That's all.
So take us back a little bit to what was it about the British cars that got you hooked?
It's just how I started into it. I like the British cars, and I had that Healy, I had the Bug Eye, and really, that's what I guess everybody seems to start and gravitate towards that as their first car. I mean, there's more, crap can MG midgets out there, and MGBs and old Spitfires and anything else, and that's how a lot of people get into the hobby. A little bit later, all the Fiats that have rusted away have, turned fans like you and I into Alfa Romeo guys. And if you really go crazy, everybody's got a Ferrari tucked away somewhere if they really get, take the bug. So I that's pretty much what I was doing. I was driving my BJ7, and then and I as it turned out, I ended up being promoted into at work. I ran like the Americas and Asia Pacific for this group I was in. It was called Auto ID, but we did barcodes and RFID and a lot of other technologies that kind of were fun, and it was fun to do. And I took these little companies that we had purchased over time, and I made them profitable. And the bad news was the board needed some money one year, and they decided mine were profitable. Let's sell them. So I ended up kind of on the outside looking in, as it turned out. And we sold the business. So I'm not sure how that worked. Anyway, sorry for the buzz there. Anyway, I was kind of on the outside looking in, and the way it worked out was I took a package. So I didn't, and I was 50 years old. I wasn't a kid, but I wasn't, 72. So I'm like,
right.
The package wasn't big enough. If I wanted to continue to the lifestyle that I'd become accustomed, which was, pissing away a fair amount of cash every year on race cars and sports cars, I was going to have to do something. So I took a few years off. I went back to college and finished the degree I never finished. And I was goofing around looking to try to get a job, and I did a couple of private equity things, and it was during the 2008, 2009 financial meltdown. So cash was a little tight. So as it turns out, my best friend, Mark Baker, you know, unfortunately he had a heart attack. Guy never smoked, never drank. But he had this business, you know, restoring mostly Austin Healey's. He had a few, he's had a Jag, he had a Jag in there, but mostly he was an Austin Healey restorer. So I was looking at it, and I went and got a real job, and I had a real job for about 4 months, and I went, boy, this is terrible. This isn't quite as much fun as I thought it was going to be. And after being off for a while, and I just wanted to do my own thing in some way, shape, or form. I didn't want to, you know, but I got that job, and I did what they wanted me to do on a contract over 6 months and about 4. So they said, you know, we're just going to let your contract run out. I went, okay. So I was helping Mark's family run the business, Sport and Specialty at the time. So I went back and I said, you know, I said, I talked to my wife, and I said, honey, I said, let's see if we can, I'm going to make the Bakers an offer on the business. Now you got to remember, this business is 75 miles from my home, and I have no desire to move. So I'm like, wow, this is going to be interesting. Yeah. So I said, well, let's see what happens. So we, you know, so as it turns out, I bought the business, and that was 10 years ago. So this is my 10th year running this business, and you know, it's really been a lot of fun. You know, it's you know, it's like any other business, Ed. You know, it's up, it's down.
Sure.
You know, it's like, oh geez, you know, I lost a person, you gained a person, you know, and being an ex-corporate guy, you don't call the controller and go, hey, I need some more cash in Singapore. You know, you don't do that. You know, it's like,
you are the cash.
You know, it's like, wow, you know, if the compressor goes out and you need, you know, $5,000 or $6,000, I go to the bank for it, you know, and it's my savings account. So, you know, or what most people don't understand too is, like, we're 3 times bigger than when we started 10 years ago. You know,
wow, that's great.
Thanks. But that also means I need more cash. So everybody goes, wow, you're doing great, you must be rich. And I'm like, no. You know, as much as
you're relevant
out, you're shoveling it back into this thing, you know, and where I had 3 employees, now I have 6, and they're paid better now. And I've got a, you know, let's call it a, you know, a more seasoned staff, although my staff is actually pretty young. The average age on my staff is 43. And then the you know, vintage sports car restoration business, that's pretty good. You know, most of the guys that are in this business now are pretty much in their, you know, 60s and 70s, and they can't get in and out of the cars as well.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, you got to think about, I mean, the knowledge base of these employees. I mean, hats off to you. One primarily for paying them better, because I think that a lot of these guys aren't really paid what they're really worth. Yep. And what they're producing. And also, you know, it's hard to find somebody that can, you know, tune in a set of Zenith carbs, you know, triple Webers or what have you, you know, find workers, you know, the old 7, like you said, the old 60, 70-year-old, 75-year-old guy. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of disappearing little by little. So, I mean, it's a trade that needs to be passed on and taught if we want to keep these old cars going.
Agreed. And I spent time with some of the different organizations, you know, trying to recruit, trying to stimulate excitement, you know, within this piece of the business. You know, I would tell you, a lot of the guys that you would think you could hire, say, out of a dealership, you can't. You can't. They don't have the basic skills. They don't have the same auto shop skills that I do. Now, I couldn't go in and work on a modern car first, I don't have the patience to remove 1,000 things before you even get to the,
True.
it's like, oh my goodness, the Alpha behind you. I've got one of those too. I've got a 71 also that used to be that color, by the way. And you just open it up, and even with the speaker, mine still has speaker injection in it.
Yeah, so does mine.
Yeah, and even with the speaker, you can get to everything. It's right there. I can
Yeah.
see you take that big air cleaner off and you dive right in.
Yeah.
A little tougher on the new stuff, but I've got one of my let's call it one of my corporate superpowers was I built good teams. So I've been very fortunate, I think, at Sport and Specialty to attract, and keep some great people. I lost a guy a couple months ago. It broke my heart. But he was a guy that we spent time training. Now he didn't go away angry. He went to a different industry because he had an opportunity that kind of came out of left field, and that happens. You have to.
That happens, and you support them.
Right.
And you support them at that time. So in the shop, I mean, you guys seem to work on a multitude of different types of vehicles. You're not like Alpha specific or MG, MG specific or anything like that. I mean, because you have an array of different manufacturers. How hard is it to work on different cars, even though they're old, they're classics, but they're all a little different? Is it something that's easily picked up, or how does that work?
Well, I wouldn't say easily picked up, but you have to make sure you've got a good core of people that know each of them. Okay. So, basically, it was an Austin Healey shop when I bought it from Mark, and everybody knew Austin Healey's. We know how to fix them, and even that's getting harder and harder to find, but we know how to do everything from the ground up. My fabrication body shop guy, Ryan Vetter, very skilled guy now, but he's been with us. He's been in the shop for 16 plus years. He knows how to do these, and he does them well. And I was fortunate enough to find a guy a couple of years ago as a mechanical guy. And George is terrific, but he grew up in that business. His dad was in the business, and George is like, early to mid 50s. But he can look at a book and figure out things. Okay. Like we're working through Jaguar stuff. He understands all the basics. So I try to make sure that, one guy is always kind of training another. We're trying to bring people in. I've got a 23-year-old guy in there that we've had working in the shop since high school. He stayed with me. I pay him appropriately. We make sure that he's got a career path, if you will. We brought another young man, another guy in. He had 13 years in the military. He came in and he's, ready to go. He wants to learn this stuff. And so I'm willing to train him. We have another guy that's early 50s, but, Bill came in from the IT industry, and he's been picking this up a little at a time. So you need to make sure people don't get stale. You need to have a program to move them through. I've done a few other programs, Ed, where I've told people, I think we as an industry, and again, I'll apologize to some of my peers and some I won't, but I think that there's a lack of sophistication on how to onboard people, and that, the old program 20, 30 years ago was easy. You hire a guy and you give him the crappiest jobs in the shop. And if he's still there a year later, maybe he's worth putting some time and money into. And,
sure.
Nowadays you can't do that. These kids are coming out with an expectation to make a little money, to learn something new. I don't say we have to baby them, and that's certainly not how anybody probably brought you or I along. But in the meantime, there's an expectation of risk and reward, and these guys if they're going to work hard, they want to be rewarded, and they want some recognition for what they do. So you can't just say, hey, clean the bathroom until I tell you to stop.
Yeah,
it's not a good program.
So at the shop, what percentage of the work that comes in would you say is like restorations or full-on restorations? versus services that are done. Maybe somebody comes in and says, hey, I need new brakes and what oil change, new brakes, and maybe somebody comes in and says, hey, I have an issue with my transmission, can you check it out? Versus somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I've got this garage fine that I want to fully restore.
Unlike being in Huntington Beach, come November, I gotta lock the doors
Because of the
so
weather.
one of the things, yeah, if it starts snowing and pretty much nobody's out and they're taking the tops down and driving their cars around. So what I found is I tend to rotate, I try to look at the business and I rotate the business around when that door gets locked. And right now in August, I'm already looking to see, because we'll always get the guys that say, hey, I need my car fixed. I don't care if I don't get it back till spring. Well, and I go, hey, I'm not a storage garage. So here's the deal, call me in the spring, so I would say when we first started, it was about 50-50, maybe, 50% restoration, depending upon the time of year. And then nowadays, I would say it's 80-20. And it's become harder and harder after the COVID thing. We've gotten busier, by the way, but, even on our restoration business, it's getting harder and harder to take cars in for service because I don't know when I'm going to get a part. And I just don't have the room to rotate cars in and out.
So it is 80% restoration.
Yeah, 75 to 80%. I mean, I could see, in a perfect world, it's mostly restoration. The problem is what people don't understand about restoration is one part can hold you up for 2 months, or you have to kind of take as much business as you can in because you don't do anything in a serial manner. You don't work on one car till it's done and move on to the next car. You've always got projects going on. And so you have to kind of manage your staff and manage parts and manage the schedule around that. So, right now we just had a meeting the other day. I have actual meetings and stuff. We run it like a business. And we were talking about, when do we stop taking in service work right now? Because if I can't get it in and out within 60 days, and sometimes that'll happen. So when, the machine shops are woefully behind right now. They can't get help. So someone comes in and says, I find a bent valve. Okay, it's got to go out to the machine shop. That car is going to sit there for 45 days maybe. That I can't have a stall occupied for 45 days. So
yeah,
it's become a very delicate dance as to when we can take them in. And I've got friends who are calling and people that are great customers of mine saying, hey, I need to get my car in. And I'm saying, I hate to tell you this, but it might be February or March before we can get that in. We're going to have to wait till the winter breaks. So my job pretty much from now until November is also to make sure I got enough restoration business to slide me through the winter because nobody's showing up.
Yeah, because it's a balancing act for you. You really have to
Absolutely.
balance it.
Right. And I've got an operations manager. His name is Ken Billmack. And Ken, that's Ken's job. I work with him and he works with the mechanical and the let's call it the body fabrication guys. That's my team. I got three guys on my team, and we all kind of work together, Rob and Peter to pay Paul to figure out how we're going to do. I could use another hand, and it's hard to find that person. Because they also have to work with a team. If you've got a really good team in this industry, and these guys like each other. They have lunch together. They goof around. They, after work, they'll stick around and have a beer together and talk about family or meet afterwards. If you have that and you bring the wrong guy in, it becomes toxic. It's a problem.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely.
So, my job is to make sure that doesn't happen. So they, my job, Ed, is kind of like I'm out, making things happen. I'm out on the planet. I said, guys, my job here is to bring you work, make sure you have the tools to do your work, make sure you have the cash I have the cash to buy more, buy more tools when we need it and keep the parts moving, and make sure, you guys always have a paycheck and that's what I do. And kind of make sure that, everybody's got a home.
So it sounds like if I said, hey, John, I'm gonna to bring my Alpha into the shop this afternoon for an oil change. Don't worry, I'll hang around the lobby till you're done. That's not really going to happen too much at your shop.
If we had been doing business for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and I had a filter, or you had the oil, I might sneak you in, okay, because just because, right? But if you called and said, hey, and you don't argue about the price, and you don't whine and cry about everything. But no, if you come in, but if you come in and I might be able to sneak in, occasionally. But even some of the people that do that occasionally start taking advantage of it. And you just got to say no.
Yeah.
If I've got 2 cars on a lift, and part of it is too, the people we get parts from, I'm not getting them from Napa.
Right.
I don't have a guy dropping them off. So, I argue somewhat regularly, with one of the big British car part companies, and they say, wow, we're getting better, getting new parts. And I said, well, if I put a car on a lift on Thursday and I take it apart and I can't move it around the shop, suspension wise or brakes, and I do that and I place an order on Friday and you guys don't ship it till Tuesday and I don't see it for another week, I've locked up, an opportunity to make money. I said, you guys got to do better than that. Well, that's part of the challenge with this business, because those people also sell to the general public. They sell to the hobbyist.
Right.
And the hobbyists think it's fun. They think this is great. I've been waiting forever for this part. For them, it's something to talk about over a beer on Thursday night.
Exactly.
For me, it's like, hey, I just lost $300-400 waiting for this part to come in. Come on, boom, boom, boom. So
does it when you got into it, was this something that you already kind of knew coming into the role here of buying the shop, or was it something like one of these things you kind of said, because I can see it kind of almost being a little like overwhelming where you're like, oh man, if I don't have this, this is going to get locked up. Oh my God, I'm going to have this car on this lift, I
had a guy that worked for Mark, and it kind of took over for a year before I bought it. I was in my past lives, I was kind of an acquisition guy. So I kind of knew, I was brave enough to like put my head down and jump in and not know what's going on. I've been part of 2 or 3 different businesses where I was in the printing business, the offset printing business. Somebody said, here, you're in charge of this business. I'm like, I don't know anything about this business. They're like, you better learn, okie doke. Okay. And so I've been down that road before. I knew a lot of the customers, that Mark had, and Mark and I were close enough where, we'd, commiserate and bitch about our businesses or whatever we were doing. And so I kind of knew how things went there. I was fortunate that way,
Yeah.
And so, but Mark's business wasn't exactly a growth at the time. He wasn't really growing. So, the growth thing I had to kind of bring to it, how to get in, I didn't want to do Heelys the rest of my life. So I decided, Jaguars would be a good place to go next. So we got into the Jaguar business, and, that took a lot of focus and time and effort, and a little more than a little bit of, missteps, where I couldn't bill for the 6 hours it took us to do something that should have taken 2. Okay. And that's fine. That's part of what the cost of doing business. But then we got into Alphas, because I like Alphas, and, and we've done some special one-off cars, and we've done, we've got a 51 Mercury in there right now, which is cool. We're putting a new chassis on it. And quite honestly, my guys get bored of looking at Heelys. I got all of a sudden, and I swear to God, every time I think we're never going to have another Heely in the shop, 5 of them show up, and we've got like 4 or 5 of them in right now. I'm like, where the hell did these come from? I don't understand it. And the guys call. And part of it is because, there just isn't a lot of guys doing this. The guys are starting to go through, and, I'm in my mid 60s. And I look around, I'm like a kid still in this business to some of the guys. So, we'll see. It's not a super complicated business, but there's some nuance to it that takes a little finesse.
So the fact that you still vintage race, I mean, I'm sure that the having the shop and vintage racing, I sure kind of go hand in hand in the sense of of potential new clients and customers coming to you, or you already may have a steady group of vintage racer clients that bring their cars, that have been bringing their cars to your shop for years.
Well, vintage racers are the ultimate like cheap guys. Okay. I mean, everybody, especially in the Midwest. I mean, the West Coast and East Coast, I'll tell you, even the restoration shops out there on the West Coast and the East Coast, are they charge way more than I do. Okay. I'm at about I'm at $1.10 for restoration. Most of the restoration shops, the West Coast and East Coast are significantly above that. Many of them, or of the kind, of the caliber that we are, let's say. And I find it funny. Because a lot of it has to do, let's call it boat thinking. Okay. Huntington Beach, I've been in the harbor. I've got friends that live there. But it's for you guys, it's cold out. It's not cold out. It's pretty nice out. You can sail, you can go out on you can use boats all the time.
Sure.
In the car culture doesn't really shut down out there. Like in Arizona, they don't drive in the summertime, but they drive a lot in the wintertime. So, it's a little bit different, but a lot of this, the California, Florida guys, a lot of that is a little bit different. You guys can enjoy your cars a little bit more. For us, not so much. We tend to like look at it. We can only race until the end of October, and then it shuts down, and we don't go back out until May. You can kind of, you guys can kind of do that stuff a little bit longer. They're racing.
It's kind of like in the boating industry where boats get or laid up. They're, they take them out of the water, they lay them up, and then they pop them back in April or something, or May, pop them back into the water.
Pretty much. So, but we don't, the guys in the Midwest go, okay, I'll take care of it in the off season. So they don't send them to me. They just do a lot of their own work. So it's kind of, in the West Coast, you get maybe have I look at some of the cars in the Monterey Classics and I'm like, holy cow, a lot of these guys do arrive and drive. We've only got 2 or 3 guys in the Midwest that really do a good job with that. I go to some of the races at Road America. The guys are trucking in semis full of race cars, classic race cars from the East and West Coast. They're all coming in. There's like 2 or 3 guys from around our area that do that. It just isn't, it's more of a thing on the 2 coasts where the weather's a little more, temperate, and they can do it a little bit longer. So we do prep, we do some service, but I've got two race cars in right now. That's it. And the rest are restorations. I like doing race car work. It's fine. But see, I also don't do arrive and drive. So when I go to the racetrack, if I have a customer whose car breaks, I don't want them bothering me. I might be going out in the next heat. So,
right.
But on the other hand, you're right. I mean, I'm a very fortunate guy. I derive my income from this. I have my own classic cars that I'm restoring. I've got a Alpha 65 Alpha Veloce, Giulia Veloce Spider that we're restoring right now, and I've got a 356 that's lining up over here in the corner, that I want to do. So, I get to vintage race, I get to do this, I get to do that, and I'm immersed in it. I'm pretty much immersed in it, and I get to do, podcasts with guys like you, and I have a blast. I mean, this is, everybody goes, oh, you're living the dream, except some days you come home and you go, man, that was today was not the dream, man. It was not the dream,
That wasn't too dreamy today.
No. This was not the dream I had in mind. But generally speaking, it's fun. It was funny. I very early after I bought the business, I was asked to sponsor a Sunday afternoon piece with the RPM Foundation. Diane Fitzgerald had it, and Lynn St. John and Bobby Rahal agreed to come out and speak. So I got to introduce them, and I was like, wow, does it get any
That's a
cooler
dream.
than this? Right. So I even have a couple of pictures, and Bobby was super gracious, and Lynn and I have been friends and for a while, and she's really funny. But somebody asked Bobby, like, what is it like? Because he owns it, and most people don't know, he also owns a bunch of BMW dealerships in Ohio, and he's in it, not only with the Letterman Ray Hall thing, but the whole piece. And I'm looking, and he says, yeah, he goes, I don't watch football, he goes, I watch racing. I sell cars. I mean, his whole piece is like that. And every once in a while I start laughing, because that's all I do. We're restoring cars, where people call me that for, referrals and to do this and to do that. And then I'm vintage racing. Next week I go out to the National Austin Healey meet in Poconos, so Sunday morning, Saturday morning, I load up, and I head out there, and I'm bringing my own car. I'm going as a participant. I'm not, I'm a sponsor, but I'm not. They asked me to do a presentation, and I went, no, I'm not doing a present. I'm judging, I guess. I'm like, okay, I'll judge, but I don't want to do that. I just want to go out and be one of the guys. I want to hang out and go on the tours and, drink a few beers and talk to other car people.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a little bit more fun, but yeah, I mean, this is quite a thrill, quite a ride.
So so is that what's next for you coming up? I mean, is there other events or things that do you guys do any events at the shop? Do you guys do, cars and coffees or anything like that every once in a while, or
we're far enough out. I'm probably 90 miles from O'Hare. Like I said, I'm 75 miles from the shop. So I go up, I'm not there every day. I used to be up there 4 or 5 days a week. I'm probably up there 3-4 days a week now. And I do a lot of the running around down in the populated part of the world. I get chrome, or I was at the upholsterers today before we talked. So I do a lot of the running around, and take care of a lot of those things. But I don't, I do an open house every year. If you look on my website, you'll see, I probably get 60 cars out for an open house in July, August. And it's just far enough where it's a nice drive. People like to come out. A lot of people don't come out 2 years in a row. They'll go someplace else, which is fine. I like having them out, and I get a food truck out and an ice cream truck, and people come out and hang out. I open up the shop, and people can look at the projects we have going on. And my guys, I said, listen, I need you to work for free one day, because I can't afford to have all you guys here doing nothing for a day. On the other hand, they really like it. I think they tell me that. I'm not sure they're, telling me the truth, but they get to show off their work. They get to walk around and go, yeah, this is what I'm working on now. And people are really interested in it. And as we go from, Heelys to Jags to Alphas to maybe Porsches and, and even some hot rod business, more people come out and take a look at it and go, hey, would you think about doing one of these? Or how about one of these? We've got my friend Richard Lincoln's Devon in right now, which is a really cool car. And we're working on that and trying to do some things that he wants to go to the next step on. So, I've got a Lotus Cortina that, race car that's come in. And so, as you asked, how do you get to the, other, you show people that you're interested in working in other stuff, and, they'll hey, would you like to work on one of these? Oh yeah, I would,
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the shop is called Sport and Specialty. And it's in what city is it located?
Well, it's near Rockton, Illinois, just north of Rockford, Illinois. But it's just right at the Wisconsin border, between very close to the Wisconsin border in Illinois, just north of Rockford.
Got it. Okay. And, for everybody, if you want to see the website, it's sport and www.sportandspecialty.com, right?
Yes, AND specialty.com. Not no ampersand. And it's a great website. I had a lot of fun putting that together too. I've got a friend that's pretty astute at doing that, and he and I tend to let it tends to get behind for 5 or 6 months, in the summer and fall, just because we got so many other things going on. And then I usually go on a bonsai run and just focus on it for a couple of weeks and show all the new cars that we did last year and what we have going on. And a lot of people, we get a lot of kudos on the website, and it also tells a little bit more background about myself and my guys, and how the business came to be, and then what cars I'm driving these days. And it's just one of those things that you can answer some questions if you have anything about the shop.
What's the best way if somebody wants to reach you, John, if they have a question about the shop, or maybe they just want to meet you? I mean, what's the best way probably for them to do that?
They can go on the website, on the front page, down at the bottom, it says contact us. You can do it, John at sportandspecialty.com, which is my email address, or my cell phone number's on there. So if, I'm not gonna, you can look it up. Ed, it wasn't very hard to find me. But if you want to look on the website, my cell phone's on there, the shop number's on there, and my cell phone. If you want to talk to me directly, feel free to give me a call. I tend to be, as an ex-corporate guy, I tend to be one of these guys that's like always like available, unfortunately, much to my wife's chagrin.
Yeah.
You know how that goes. It's like, God, stop, would you?
Please don't call John after 9 p.m., please.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or during I finally get home and it's like, oh no. Yeah. I'll just call you in the morning. Leave a message.
Saturdays and Sundays are off limits, and dinner time, please.
True. Actually, it's true. We don't, we work Monday through Friday, 5 days. I don't have Saturday, Sunday hours. I can't afford the overtime, quite honestly, but I try to make it, as hospitable as possible for myself and my guys.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Well, hey, John, this has been fun. Thank you so much. Any last parting words or anything you want to let us know, or, any advice for any up and coming young person wanting to get into the industry? What would be that one thing you want to tell them that might make them shine a little bit?
It's pursue it. I hate to say it. I mean, pursue it. This is like any other business. If you want to get into it, pursue it. I keep telling people they should brand themselves. They should have a business card with their name on it and said, I am a vintage mechanic, or I am a great fabricator body guy. And nowadays, make a name for yourself. If you have a car you like, take it out and show it around. Bring it to shops. Show your name. Don't be shy. You know what? It would be appreciated by the shop owners. And if they don't appreciate you coming out doing it, there aren't any place you want to work for anyway.
In the first place, yeah.
Exactly. So, meet as many people as you can. That's one thing I've done really well in this industry is I've networked a lot, and I know I know lots of young guys. I know lots of older guys. And let me tell you, we all like one thing. We all like big cars. We're having fun with them, and doing shows like this are a blast. I hope it increases my reach. And, like I said, I hope people call me.
Yeah. Thanks, John, so much. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And again, anybody you want to reach, John, Sport and Specialty is the shop. And they are out in Illinois. So again, John, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time.
Take care.
Thanks, man.
All right.